Talked about this the other day, and Brian kind of lost his mojo, and it was like a one-sided conversation.
Are you saying I couldn't get my death up?
Yeah.
I couldn't get my death hard.
Welcome back to the Harley and Malarkey Podcast, Old Dog New Tricks.
Roof. Get it? Oh, no.
Yeah, what does a new trick do?
Yeah. I want to just talk about really important things right now.
Okay, well,
and educate the world.
What are we going to talk about today? Are we talking about death, or we need a little warm-up before that?
No, I think that's a good one to start in. Today, we are talking about death, the end of your existence, the end of life, and what that looks like, and why everybody is so scared to take a peek.
Talked about this the other day, and Brian kind of lost his mojo, and it was like a one-sided conversation.
Are you saying I couldn't get my death up?
Yeah.
I couldn't get my death hard. That's so funny. I love that.
Is it?
Yeah.
Now today, I feel like I'm the one with the low mojo. The dog woke me up at 5:45, and then I couldn't fall back asleep, and so I took
This old dog woke you up at 4:45?
No, the other dog.
Oh, Scout.
And then I took some CBD to fall back asleep, so I'm still in a bit of a haze. But here we go. So I think you wanted to talk a little bit more about the logistical side of death, and I want to talk a little bit more about the spiritual side of death. So I think let's do both. Would you like to start with some logistics?
You know I'd love to go first.
Okay.
Well, as I am closer to the end than you are, right?
Potentially. I mean, that's what we agree upon, but
yeah, but something we cannot control.
Exactly, yeah.
So I just think in order to get everything in order, you should let your partner, your family, your friends know what you want done with your body. We watched a great little movie last night, way out of your wheelhouse.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's way out of my wheelhouse. Captain Fantastic.
And that dealt with death. The death of the mother, the wife.
Yeah.
And she was a Buddhist, but the family wanted to bury her.
Her family was Catholic,
and they wanted to put her in a box and put her in the ground. And the dad, the kids, and everybody went and dug her up because she jokingly said, "I want to be burned." And I loved how they burned her. It was like a pagan.
I think it's called a funeral pyre.
A funeral pyre. That's what I want. That's what I want. So upon watching that, at first I was like, "Oh, I want to be cremated." That's just so pedestrian. But they dug her up and they giggled and laughed because they knew their mom didn't want to be trapped in a box for the rest of her life. And they put her on a funeral pyre, like the Vikings or the pagans, and they burned her. And then she jokingly told them in her will and last testament or statement, I don't know, is that what it's called?
Yeah.
That she wanted to be taken to a public place and flushed down a toilet, which I love.
And that's what they did.
And they did.
Yeah.
They took her to the airport and they dumped her in the toilet and they said goodbye to mom and they all giggled and laughed. A great movie, Captain Fantastic, if you haven't seen it. And that brings us really focused on death. And I firmly believe, and I told you this last night, I wanted to be burned on a funeral
pyre. I should Google that to make sure that that's like a real thing. It just kind of came to me.
And up at Rainbow Lake, we have a lot of old wood and stuff like that. And I couldn't imagine something more fantastic, as Captain Fantastic did, on placing my body up there. Everyone gathered around, dancing, laughing, having the best time, and releasing my dead body, and my soul's already gone, to the stars.
Yeah, I did confirm it is called a funeral pyre. I told Brian I think I would have some trouble legally getting control of his dead body. I think that there's a lot of logistics, and you're not really allowed to keep a dead body and do with it as you please.
But I think that needs to change. I firmly believe that, you know what, you can make a statement with my dead body by burning me on the funeral pyre, just a big pile of wood, right? And that would make national news, right? Everybody would be like, "Oh my God, this crazy woman stole her dead partner's body." Probably your husband at that point, right?
Yeah, I hope so.
Well, I want to recreate that name too. So, another podcast. But you're going to grab my children, who are not quite as wild as the ones on the movie last night, but grab my body, sneak me up to Rainbow Lake, invite all the family and friends up there. right? Have a great party, a feast, and burn me and dance like wild animals as I'm released in the smoke to the stars and the moon and the sky.
See, I like that. You asked me what I wanted to do with my body on this podcast that we're not releasing. And, I do like the concept of cremation over being buried in a box. I do not want to be buried in a box. However, I just don't find it appealing because I know the way that people are cremated today are in these like metal ovens where tons of other people are burned, and that feels very unnatural.
Ew.
And kind
How
of,
do we even know it's your ashes? You
yeah,
know what I'm
I
saying?
think a lot of times they probably give you the wrong ashes. So like that just, I don't know, that didn't appeal to me. So I told you I wanted to be buried like with a tree and become the soil and the dirt.
Is that an opportunity?
I don't know if people are doing it in practice, but it is something that has been discussed, and there are like prototypes for it. I think it might be done.
I did read a little snippet recently that if you bury a body on your property, it helps you with your taxes. And I know it's completely illegal, but I mean, dig a hole.
Is it illegal?
You know what it is? Maybe if I die, let's talk about how we want to die.
Talking about something.
Yeah, you wanted to have a tree grow out of you.
Yeah. Well, yes, but I hadn't finished my thought. You don't know how to listen.
I'm really working on it, my sweet love.
Okay.
Please.
So I said the way that you described being burned in that ceremonial way does appeal to me, but being cremated in the traditional sense, I do find quite off-putting.
Do you think our listeners are like, you guys are so full of BS right now, malarkey? You're talking about things you cannot do.
Well, the only way that things can change is if somebody disagrees.
Right. There we go.
But I think another interesting thing is like, yeah, how much say do you have over your body once it's dead? Like, why is that up to the government or the state to decide where you are? And then it also made me think of the TV show that we watched the night before, The Perfect Couple, which I tuned the whole show out, but I did notice the part where
it is one of the worst TV shows of all time.
The woman had cancer, and it made her feel safe to have these 3 pills that she could take to end her life, to carry on her. And
euthanasia.
Yeah, that's an interesting concept too, of like, do you have the right to decide when you want to die? Like, I think technically suicide is not legal.
There was that Dr. Kevorkian or whatever back in the day that was making a lot of stuff where he would actually help people in their lives when they were in misery and pain. Not sure where we ever wound up with that, but I think I found the loophole. I just thought through it.
What?
Okay, so imagine, what's everybody's dream way of dying?
Old age.
Yes, in a
bed.
You just fall asleep and never wake up, right? That's kind of the most peaceful way I could imagine dying.
Yeah.
Kind of boring, to be honest. I'm a little more exciting than that. But imagine I did that.
Yeah.
I fall asleep and have great... like Matthew McConaughey's. Yes, Matthew McConaughey's dad. You die while having sex. Now, that might be the greatest way to die.
Well, think of me, okay?
Well, you would... I'd have a smile on my face. But that's where my body still belongs to you.
Yeah.
That's where you got to call the troops, call the crew, and go, get Rainbow Lake. Here we go. Throw me in the back of a truck or pickup, whatever. Boom, boom, boom. That way they're not putting you full of chemicals and putting you in like a storage unit with a tag on your toe and stuff like that. You got to just run me to Rainbow Lake and burn me.
And then what? I'm going to get arrested for murder while I'm in the middle of grieving?
No, because I think it's going to make such a huge political statement.
How can we prove that you died of natural causes? That I didn't kill you and I was just burning the body?
Just take a video. Like, look, he's not breathing.
Yeah, I could have just had a chloroform rag over your mouth, so that doesn't really prove anything.
That's just part of fun. This is something that we do analyze, because just think about it. Are those our 2 options right here? Is you die, they pump you full of a bunch of chemicals, they put you in a box and they bury you in a golf course, or they put you in a giant overused incinerator and give you ashes and give you to the family, hoping that maybe you have the right ashes.
Yeah, I think those are
That's all we got?
Yeah.
I think this is something we need to analyze.
In the U.S., I think that like other cultures, I think have a lot of really interesting rituals and ceremonies around death. And I imagine that makes the whole process of death easier to stomach because death is part of life in a lot of other cultures. And I think for the US, death is not really part of life. And that is exemplified in the way that we bury our dead. Like, we're very divorced from the process in general. You give it to a mortician, they embalm you with fake fluid. You give it to a crematorium, they burn you up. Like, we are very divorced from death. We're scared of dead bodies. Whereas in other cultures, like, there's a viewing, there's a resting with the dead body. And I think these things
need to change.
Well, I don't know if they will, but I think it's an interesting thing to talk about, of like how the United States, especially, like, I think it aligns with our puritanical values around sex. Like, we're very like scared of like the real parts of life.
Interesting. I think this is a great opportunity. This is something to talk about with your loved ones, your family, your friends, and really decide how you want to be celebrated, preferably celebrated if you died tragically and unfulfilled or miserable. That's hard to celebrate. But let's all just imagine that we're all going to live amazing lives, sense of accomplishment, sense of worth, sense of love, and we're celebrated at the end. These are kind of weak ways to pass on.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, let's go on your little spiritual journey. Let's get on your magic carpet.
Well, we'll get on there in a second, but I think I have lost my mother. You've lost your father. I don't know how involved you were with that because he had a wife and everything, and my brother did most of the work when my mom passed away. But the other thing to talk about with your loved ones is like, how do I find the bank account passwords? Do you have storage units somewhere? Like, what are your wishes around this? Like, all the logistics, because like when somebody dies, there's so much paperwork you have to fill out. You have to close all their bank accounts. You have to, like, my mom had storage units and we couldn't find where they all were. And we had to get something out of a storage box in the bank, but you have to like jump through all these hoops to get it all done. So I think having the conversation, like, you know, if you're older or even not that old, like, you should really, you know, not ignore that you're going to die someday and have plans to give to somebody, or you should have that conversation with your parents.
Acknowledging the truth.
Yes.
Right. And so Mamie, my mom, Leslie, she's pretty good. She's like,
on top of it.
She's like, you want this? You want this? You want this? She's writing notes on it. I'm like, dang. She's
the bitch has got another 20 years on her.
She's got a long time to go, but she is trying to get her affairs in order so there isn't lost boxes, there isn't lost paperwork, and you know exactly, because it's very, very stressful on those left behind.
Yeah, no, it is. Yeah, Mamie has this book called like What to Do When I Die, and it's like a whole scrapbook that like gives you the prompts of like, here's this info, here's this info. So she's like showed me where it is. She showed me where she hides all the jewelry.
Wow.
Just in case.
You're in the circle of trust, because I'm not in that circle.
Yeah, I'm in the circle of trust. But like for my dad, I need to ask him a lot of questions. Like, I don't know a lot of stuff. I took him to get shoulder surgery once. He's like, hey, if anything happens, like, everything you need's in this box. But I'm like, I have a lot more questions than that.
What's in the box? I just want to know what's in the box.
But it is something that, like, it's not fun to think about. Like, I have friends that are just like so paralyzed by, you know, the thought of their parents dying. And like, that has always been my greatest fear, is like losing the people that I love most in this world, because it's a huge loss and it's terrifying to think of that. But it is the reality. Like, if you're lucky, you know, everybody is alive when their parents are dead. Like, hopefully you outlive your parents. And I think that, you know, that doesn't make it any less sad, but I think coming to more of a place of acceptance that, like, that is the cycle of life.
Mike Malarkey, my father, now he had a different outlook on death, right?
Yeah.
And so and this is important, and my insurance man told me this once. He goes, you know, everybody dies. You should have an insurance policy on people. So my dad used to refer to his children as his lucky little lottery tickets. He had us all insured because insurance is very affordable when you're young. And so Dad, he was the kind of guy that said, go play in the freeway. Oh, that's some old dog stuff right there. But insurance policies are important, and they also help pay for funeral expenses. And at the end of the day, guys, we all die. And you should have an insurance policy on your loved ones, because somebody should benefit when you pass. It is a lottery ticket.
Yeah.
And don't think of it as an evil thing. You know who's evil is the insurance company who's collecting and collecting and collecting. Get some of that money back.
Yeah. I know my dad canceled his life insurance policy because he thought it was a waste of money. And I'm like, thanks a lot, Dad, because
Yeah, you don't cancel the insurance policy if you
when
start
you're in your 70s too. I'm like, well, that's not going to help us. Yeah. But that's how Harley.
That's the shallow old man thinking right there. Please take us on your spiritual journey.
My biggest fear from a young age was losing somebody close to me. I remember being a kid, and I don't know why. Like, I would, if I couldn't get a hold of my parents or they wouldn't answer their cell phones, I would think like, oh my gosh, they died in a car crash. Or if like my parents were ever late to pick me up from school, like that was my immediate thought. Like, fuck, they're dead.
Dead.
Did you ever have that happen as a kid?
No, not at all.
Okay, that was like a constant, like, that was something I lived with constantly, just like worrying that my parents were going to die. And I think I took that through to college too. I would constantly worry about them. My last boyfriend, like I was like really anxious when we first started dating. And if he wouldn't answer his phone, I like assumed he had died too. Like that was just kind of like my worst fear and where my mind went to all the time. I still am afraid of losing the people close to me, but I think I've gotten a lot more comfortable with death. And it was a process that kind of started in 2020. One, my intention for 2020 was to get more in touch with my sense of spirituality. I was reading a lot of like spiritual books, Buddhist books. I started microdosing some psilocybin, which, you know, can open up your brain. I think a lot of people, a macrodose would probably make you really comfortable with death, but I wasn't macrodosing.
Okay.
I got to see this amazing psychic medium, which I know people are very skeptical of, but the things that she told me about my grandma who had passed and the messages that my grandma was bringing through, like there was no way that anybody else could have known that unless they had the ability to connect to the other side. So I think the combination of those three things kind of opened up my mind to death isn't, you know, this slamming of a door. It's this transformation of energy, and it's part of life, and it's just something to get more comfortable with.
I like that, the transformation of energy. And I think that when we look at death, you can look at my side. How do you want to be buried? What's going to happen? It goes down. But the big question is what happens after to that person, right? And, you know, Christianity believes you're going to heaven. A lot of religions believe you're going to this heaven, this afterworld. Some people just believe it's lights out.
Yeah.
Game over, right? And then a lot of spiritual people believe that you go to another realm, a transformation, and you can still be involved and still be around your loved ones.
Yeah.
And that's the one you believe in.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's like a specific one. I think it's just kind of what I've cobbled together from my readings and experiences. But I think that, you know, when we pass on, our soul stays preserved and we kind of join these other sea of souls, is how I put it before, of just all these like angels and ancestors and people that have passed on. And what it's been described as in literature is you're all kind of one, but you're all like, it's like you're waves in an ocean, spokes on a wheel. So you're one, but you kind of have a distinct soul, which is hard to wrap your head around.
I'm so having a hard time.
Yeah, no, it's confusing. But I would say, you know, losing my mom too, like I had a challenging relationship with my mom while she was alive. She had mental health issues. She had substance abuse issues. But since she's passed away and since I have this more open-minded idea of what death means, I feel like I can feel her spirit around me, that she communicates with me, that she's looking out for me. And I feel like I have a better relationship with her now. I trust her more than when she was alive in her body.
I think that's a great thought there, is the fact that we hope and believe and feel, I think we both do, that when somebody does pass, all of their sins, their imperfections, their troubles have been left in the dump
with the body
of the body. And now their soul is clean and refreshed and open and revitalized and pure again.
Yeah. And I think that from like the spiritual kind of teachers that I've talked to, like it's what they think, this is all hypothetical, but that when you pass on, you do a little bit of a life review, like kind of your whole life passes before your, you know, soul in fast motion, and you kind of get to see everything clearly. It's like being an eagle, taking the like bird's eye view of your whole life and seeing like, oh, I was really stuck there. I was really like I didn't understand what I was doing there. And I have this Reiki woman who I see very often, who's amazing. She has like medium kind of psychic abilities. Like she's able to connect with the other side. And my mom has come through in a lot of my readings, and like she's come through and apologized multiple times. Just like, I like, now I can see like what I was putting you through and the way that I was treating you. And I'm so sorry. And I'm so proud of the person you are today. And I can understand where, like, even my brother who's seen her and who had like a crazy reading of the things that came through, he's like, I think it's all bullshit. But for me, like, the things that she shared have been incredibly healing.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. That's great. I think anything that helps you gain closure and acceptance and comfort is very, very important. So if it is going to see a psychic, it is going to see a priest, it is going to, burn your loved ones at Rainbow Lake and letting their soul go, a little sense of closure and acceptance. And I think really, for the most part, forgiveness.
Yeah.
Your mother had imperfections, my father, we all have imperfections. But if you can release that and just remember the good parts of your loved ones when they're gone, I think it's better for yourself also.
Yeah. I don't think it's that you have to gaslight yourself into forgetting all the hard things that they put you through, but it's forgiveness. It's like, and it's acceptance. Like, yes, they were struggling. They were hurting. That's why they treated me the way that they did. I'm not going to hold on to that anymore. And I'm going to appreciate what they did bring into my life. And now I'm going to appreciate them in this new form that doesn't have all those imperfections in it.
Yes. Just acknowledgement. I like that. I like that. Acknowledgement. I try not to dwell on the negatives, and I look at the positives, and realizing that people make mistakes in their lives, not because they could control their emotional states, but again, we all have imperfections, and I love the idea of letting those imperfections fade with the body and letting the spirit free.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's the best way to do it, of just like, why you don't have to think about those things anymore because they're not helping anybody. But
so if I can't find a way to grow a tree out of you, what's my other option?
We have some time to figure it out.
No, you never know. You don't know.
I was listening to this podcast yesterday with Tyler Henry, this medium to the stars. He's done some TV shows. He did a great one on Netflix. But he talks about how, like, a lot of people come see psychics when they are grieving. And the question they asked him was like, well, how do you help them, like, how do you help them get rid of their grief? And he was like, I don't think anybody ever gets rid of all of their grief. And if you did get rid of all of your grief, that would be sad, because that means that you've forgotten all the beautiful things of why you loved this person so much and why you cared about this person so much. And that, like, grief is just kind of love that doesn't exactly have a place to go anymore. I don't know if that's the right way to put it, but that grief is like a symbol of the love and the beauty that you shared with somebody else. And you can kind of lessen its intensity. But then when you've lost somebody that you really love, like, that grief, the longing for them is always going to be there in some form or another.
Grief is good.
I want to just touch on one more thing, which is signs and communications from your loved ones. Do you feel like you've ever had a loved one communicate with you from your side? I know you've lost your stepsister or your dad.
I firmly believe yes. I think I ran into my dad just a couple of weeks ago up in Oregon.
Yeah.
We were buying crab at the Stinky Crab place, but it's the best crab because guess what? Crab is stinky. And I just asked this gentleman, I was like, oh my God, we're talking about cocktail sauce. The best cocktail sauce is in Indianapolis. Have you ever been to St. Elmo's? And he goes, I'm from Indianapolis. And I was like, wow. And then I said, well, thank you so much. Appreciate it. What's your name? He goes, my name is Mike. And my father's name was Mike. And then I looked at this guy and I was like, oh my gosh, this is my dad if he'd lived his perfect life. Selling crab, telling stories, smiling, healthy. And I was like, it was really fun because it was in his favorite place that he used to take us to as children. And Mike Malarkey was happy and healthy, living on the Oregon coast like he always wanted to.
I love that. And I think, like, that very well could have been a sign from your dad. Like, I didn't really want to go in there. You're like, no, we have to go in here. But even if it wasn't, like, for the skeptics out there, like, that's a beautiful thing to believe and to take comfort in. So don't be such an asshole if you're trying to tell people what they believe isn't true, that they find helpful and comforting. In 2020, I was reading all my spiritual books and I started being introduced to this concept of signs and, like, asking for signs from a loved one who's passed on, or just the universe in general, to kind of show you you're on the right track or to get some comfort. And so the first sign I ever asked for was, I was like, I want to see if my grandma's like looking out for me. And I was like, so if she is, universe, show me purple giraffes within the next 24 hours.
Purple
giraffes. Giraffes, like the long neck African animals. And I was like, I'm kind of fucked. I'm never going to see purple giraffes. And then the next day I was going on a walk at lunch. I was in town for this nutrition convention thing. And one of the other teachers was like, hey, Danielle, do you want to share my umbrella? It was raining. And I was like, sure. She pops out her umbrella. It's purple and covered in giraffes.
Oh, grandma was there.
Grandma was there. And there's this really beautiful book called Signs by this psychic Laura Lynn Jackson that I give to everybody who's recently lost somebody. So I highly recommend that book. But when my mom passed away, it happened when I was on the plane to Greece to do my yoga teacher training. And so, it was kind of a nice place to be to process all of that. But it was kind of the first time somebody really close to me was on the other side. And I was like, well, I want to feel like I'm getting a sign from my mom. And when I was getting off the little plane in Greece, like after I just found out, the song that was playing was Bob Marley, No Woman, No Cry, which I love Bob Marley and my mom knows that. And I kind of felt like that was her. And now anytime I hear that song, like I feel like it's her sending me a message. But I asked specifically to see Beatles because my mom loved Beatles, the band, as like the sign from my mom. And I get this, like probably 2 days after I asked for this sign, I get this picture from my friend Hannah, and she's like, look at what my nephew drew. And he drew a bunch of Beatles, the Bug, playing musical instruments, singing the Beatles' birthday song.
The Beatles as the Beatles.
The Beatles as the Beatles.
Got it.
It's very confusing. It's not the most straightforward side to explain, but the Beatles birthday song, great song. My mom played it for us every single year on our birthdays. I started playing it for my friends because of her. And so to get this sign that it was like little Beatles playing my mom's favorite birthday song, it made me cry. I was like, okay, that feels like a very clear sign. Like, how random is this that my friend is sending me a picture of her nephew's card? And then I feel like Beatles, the Bug, kind of became a sign with my mom. And on her birthday, I was sitting outside having a cup of coffee with a friend, and a Japanese beetle lands on my head. And I'm like, that's weird. Wouldn't get off me. I was trying to flick it off. And then another one lands on my arm. And I'm like, well, I guess my mom wants to hang out with me today. I don't know who she brought as her friend, but
this was her birthday?
Yeah. And I just sat there and drank coffee with these two beetles for like over 30 minutes. And it just made me feel like really close to my mom. And I felt like every single song that was playing on the radio on my way there was like a hand-picked song by my mom. And I think that those are really nice practices to open yourself up to and open your mind up to the possibility that somebody that you love is here to provide you comfort and show you that they're still watching out for you.
Look for the signs.
Follow us on iTunes or Spotify or YouTube. Leave us a rating and review. We love it. Send us any questions.
Yeah, I dare you to.